He crossed the line. Now I won't stop.
They say you can't plan for life's curveballs. SWAT taught me you can, if you're ready to break down the door. My name is Nick Foster, and at 41, I've kicked down more doors than a census taker with anger management issues. 15 years commanding the St. Paul SWAT team taught me that most problems have simple solutions: overwhelming force, precise timing, and the willingness to do what others won't. What they don't teach you at the academy is how to handle it when your own life explodes from the inside. I was sitting in my modest two-bedroom house on Minnehaha Avenue, staring at divorce papers that had been final for 6 months, when my phone buzzed. Laura's name on the screen made my stomach clench like I'd swallowed broken glass. Nick? Her voice was shaky, that particular tremor that meant she'd been drinking, again. What do you want, Laura? I kept my tone neutral, professional. Same voice I used for hostage negotiations. I need your help. He's been staying here, and things got out of hand last night. Mia saw everything. Brian Cade, the 36-year-old entrepreneur who'd been screwing my wife for the last year of our marriage. Local tough guy who ran a barely legal auto shop and thought his muscles made him invincible. The kind of man who called women baby and settled arguments with his fists. Define out of hand, I said, already reaching for my keys. He hit me, in front of Mia. She locked herself in her room and won't come out. My daughter, 14 years old, smart as hell, and stubborn enough to argue with a brick wall. She'd inherited my sarcasm and her mother's fire, which made her both my pride and my biggest worry. Where is he now? Gone, but he said he'd be back tonight. Nick, I'm scared. I should have hung up. Should have told her to call 911 like any other domestic violence sufferer. But Mia was involved now, and that changed everything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Laura's apartment was in a rundown complex on the east side, the kind of place where the parking lot had more potholes than asphalt and the mailboxes looked like they'd been hit by artillery. A far cry from our old house in Highland Park. But then again, a lot had changed since the divorce. She answered the door looking like hell warmed over. Laura had been beautiful once, the kind of woman who could stop traffic just by walking down the street. Blonde hair that caught sunlight like spun gold, green eyes that sparkled with mischief, curves that made grown men forget their own names. Now she looked brittle, worn down by guilt and cheap wine. Thank you for coming, she said, stepping aside to let me in. The apartment smelled like cigarettes and desperation. Empty bottles lined the kitchen counter like soldiers, and I could see the outline of a fist-sized hole in the drywall near the front door. Classy guy. I'd said, nodding toward the damage. Really knows how to treat a lady. Don't start, Nick. Where's Mia? Her room. She won't talk to me. I knocked on my daughter's door. Hey, kiddo. It's Dad. The lock clicked and Mia peered out. She had my dark hair and Laura's eyes, but right now those eyes were red from crying. Dad, what are you doing here? Heard you had some excitement last night. Want to tell me about it? She glanced toward the living room where Laura was pretending not to listen, then stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her. Brian was drunk. Really drunk. He started yelling at Mom about money, saying she owed him for letting her stay in his apartment. Mia's voice dropped to a whisper. This isn't even his place, Dad. Mom's been paying all the rent. What happened then? Mom tried to calm him down, but he grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. When I told him to stop, he backhanded her across the face. Mia's hands were shaking. She fell down and there was blood from her nose. I thought he was going to hit me too, so I ran to my room. Ice formed in my chest, the kind of cold that comes before violence. Did he touch you? No, but he pounded on my door for like 10 minutes, screaming that I was a spoiled little witch and needed to learn respect. I pulled my daughter into a hug, feeling her shake against my chest. Over her shoulder, I could see Laura watching us with a mixture of guilt and longing. Pack a bag, I told Mia. You're staying with me tonight. What about Mom? I looked at Laura, seeing the woman I'd once loved buried somewhere beneath the wreckage of bad choices and worse men. She's a grown-up. She can take care of herself. But as I helped Mia gather her things, Laura pulled me aside. Nick, there's something else. Brian's been talking about his brother, Ryan. He's different. Military background, anger issues. Brian says Ryan doesn't forget when people cross him. Is that supposed to be a threat? I'm just warning you. Brian might not be the only problem. As we were leaving, I noticed a piece of paper sticking out from under a magazine on Laura's coffee table. The handwriting was definitely hers, flowing script I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists for 16 years. B. Last night was incredible. I never felt this way with N. You make me feel alive again. Forever yours, L. The note was dated 3 weeks before I'd found out about the affair, 3 weeks before our marriage officially ended. I'd always suspected there had been others before Brian, but seeing it in her handwriting felt like taking a sledgehammer to the chest. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. Evidence. SWAT had taught me to always collect evidence. "Ready, Dad?" Mia asked, shouldering her backpack. "Yeah, kiddo. Let's go home." As we drove away, I caught Mia staring out the window at her mother's building. "Dad, are you and Mom ever going to get back together?" I wanted to lie, to give her the fairy tale ending every kid deserves. Instead, I gave her the truth. "No, sweetheart, we're not." "Good," she said quietly. "I love Mom, but she's different now, broken, and I don't think Brian's the one who broke her." Smart kid, too smart for her own good. That night, after Mia was asleep in her old room, I sat in my kitchen staring at Laura's note. The words blurred together as I read them over and over, each repetition driving the knife a little deeper. You make me feel alive again. Apparently, 16 years of marriage, a house, a daughter, and a life built together had made her feel dead. Good to know. My phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Laura's number. "Nick, oh God, Nick, please." The line went dead. I was reaching for my keys when the phone rang again. This time it was Mia's number. "Daddy, Daddy, help us." Mia's voice was pure terror, screaming over what sounded like furniture being thrown around. "He's hurting Mommy! He's got a belt and—" The line went dead. I was already moving, grabbing my gear bag and heading for the door. My hands were steady as I dialed Jonas Martinez, my second-in-command and the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Nick, what's wrong?" "Domestic violence in progress. My ex-wife's place. I need backup. Full breach kit. On our way." I always wanted to be a supporting character in my own marriage. Now I had proof. But tonight I was taking center stage. Rain hammered my windshield as I raced through empty streets toward Laura's apartment. The SWAT van followed behind me, Jonas and 3 other team members loaded for bear. Breaking into my ex-wife's place was never on my bucket list, but here we are. The apartment complex looked different at midnight, darker, more menacing. Most of the windows were black, but Laura's second-floor unit glowed with harsh yellow light. I could hear shouting, even from the parking lot. "Unit positions," I radioed as we approached the building. "Martinez, take the back exit. Thompson and Walsh, cover the stairwell. Rodriguez, you're with me on the door." "Copy that, Commander." We climbed the external stairs in tactical formation, boots silent on wet metal. The shouting was clearer now. A man's voice, slurred with booze and rage. "You think you can embarrass me? Call your ex-husband to come save you? I'll show you what happens to lying huis." Through the thin walls, I could hear Mia sobbing and Laura pleading. Then came a sound that made my blood freeze, the sharp crack of leather on skin. "Stop! You're hurting Mommy!" Mia's scream cut through the night like a blade. I pressed my back against the wall beside the door and tried the handle. Locked, but it was a cheap deadbolt that wouldn't stop a determined teenager, let alone a SWAT team. "Brian Cade," I shouted. "This is the St. Paul Police Department. Open the door immediately." The shouting inside stopped for a moment, then resumed with increased fury. "F the police, this is between me and my woman." I looked at Rodriguez, a compact Hispanic man who could kick down a bank vault if necessary. He nodded and hefted the battering ram. "On my count. 3, 2, 1, breach." The door exploded inward with a crash of splintered wood and twisted metal. We flowed into the apartment like water, weapons ready, voices sharp with authority. "Police, get on the ground!" The scene that greeted us belonged in a war zone. Furniture was overturned, lamps shattered, family photos scattered across the floor with their frames broken. Laura was crumpled in the corner near the kitchen, blood streaming from her nose and a split lip. Her shirt was torn, revealing angry red welts across her shoulder and arm. Brian Cade stood in the center of the chaos like some kind of demon, shirtless and sweating, a thick leather belt coiled in his right hand. He was bigger than I remembered. 6'2", maybe 220, with the kind of muscle that comes from prison workouts and steroid cycles. Tattoos covered his arms and chest. Crude jailhouse art that told the story of a wasted life. But what made me see red was Mia. My daughter was pressed against the far wall, tears streaming down her face, trying to make herself invisible. There were red marks on her arm, where he'd grabbed her. "Drop the belt," Rodriguez shouted. "Get on your knees, hands behind your head." Brian's eyes were wild, pupils dilated from whatever cocktail of pills and booze was coursing through his system. He looked at our tactical gear and weapons, then at me, and his lips curled into a sneer. "Nick damn Foster. Come to play hero for your hoe ex-wife? Last warning," I said calmly. "Drop the belt and get down." Instead, Brian raised the belt like a whip and took a step toward Mia. That's when I stopped being a police officer and became something else entirely. I hit him low and hard, driving my shoulder into his solar plexus with enough force to lift him off his feet. We crashed into the coffee table, sending glass flying. He was strong, but I was trained, and more importantly, I was furious. Brian swung the belt at my head. I caught his wrist and twisted until I heard tendons pop. He screamed and dropped the belt, then tried to knee me in the groin. I shifted, took the impact on my thigh, and drove my elbow into his floating ribs. "Rodriguez," I grunted as Brian tried to bite my ear. "Give me a hand here." My team member moved in with professional efficiency, locking Brian's arms behind his back while I applied pressure to his carotid artery. Not enough to eliminate him, but enough to make his vision go gray around the edges. "You like hitting women?" I whispered in his ear. "How about we see how you handle someone who fights back?" Brian bucked and thrashed, but between Rodriguez and me, he might as well have been wrestling a mountain. I could feel his pulse hammering against my forearm, could smell the cheap whiskey and cheaper cologne on his skin. "Break a couple of his arms," I told Rodriguez quietly. My team member looked at me for a moment, then nodded. He adjusted his grip and applied leverage to Brian's shoulder joint until something popped. Brian's screaming echoed off the apartment walls. "Oops," Rodriguez said without emotion. Suspect resisted arrest. We zip-tied Brian's hands behind his back, none too gently, and left him face down on the living room floor. He was conscious, but barely, groaning and muttering threats that nobody was listening to. I moved to check on Mia first. She threw herself into my arms, shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. "I was so scared, Dad. He said he was going to teach me respect like he taught Mom." "It's over, kiddo. He can't hurt you anymore." Laura was trying to sit up, wincing as she moved. Her left eye was swelling shut, and there were finger-shaped bruises around her throat. "Nick, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." I wanted to feel sympathy for her, but all I could think about was the note in my pocket. The one where she told Brian he made her feel more alive than I ever had. "Save it," I said. "We need to get you to a hospital." As the paramedics worked on Laura, loading her onto a stretcher, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Nick, listen to me. Brian wasn't alone when he got here tonight. There was someone else in the parking lot, a man in a truck, watching." "Probably just another drunk," I said, but something cold crawled up my spine. "No." Laura's eyes were wide with fear. "Brian was on the phone with someone before he started hitting me. He kept saying, 'My brother wants to meet the famous Nick Foster.' He said someone's coming." The paramedics wheeled her away, leaving me standing in the wreckage of her apartment with more questions than answers. Brian was unconscious now, his shoulder clearly dislocated, but he'd live, unfortunately. Jonas appeared at my elbow, his weathered face grim. At 45, he'd been my partner for 8 years and had seen me through the worst parts of the divorce. He was one of the few people who knew the whole story. "Clean takedown," he said quietly. "Suspect resisted arrest, attacked officers, threatened civilians, by the book. Thanks. You okay, Nick?" I looked around the destroyed apartment, at my traumatized daughter, at the man who'd been beating my family, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. "Yeah, I'm perfect." But as we loaded Brian into the police car, I couldn't shake Laura's words. Someone's coming. In my experience, when violent men started talking about their brothers, it usually meant the situation was about to get a lot worse. I was right. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat in the waiting room with Mia while doctors examined Laura, watching my daughter try to process what she'd witnessed. She was putting on a brave face, but I could see the cracks forming. "Dad? Will Brian go to prison?" For a long time, I assured her. Attack, domestic violence, terroristic threats. He'll be lucky to see daylight before you graduate college. Good. Mia's voice was hard, older than her 14 years. I hope his cellmate is bigger than him. Jonas appeared with 2 cups of terrible coffee and a manila folder. Thought you'd want to see this, he said, handing me the file. Brian Cade's arrest record read like a greatest hits album of human garbage. Attack, battery, pill possession, theft, disorderly conduct. But what caught my attention was a note at the bottom of the page. Emergency contact. Ryan Cade, brother. Tell me about the brother. I said. Jonas flipped on to the next page. Ryan Michael Cade, 36 years old, same as Brian, twins, Army infantry, 2 tours in Middle East, discharged under less than honorable conditions. Arrested twice for attack, once for making terroristic threats against a commanding officer. The photo showed a man who looked exactly like Brian. But, where Brian had the soft edges of a bully who picked on the weak, Ryan's face was all sharp angles and carnivore focus. His eyes held the kind of emptiness I'd seen in war veterans who'd crossed lines they couldn't come back from. Wonderful. So we've got one psychopath in custody and another one running around loose. Gets better, Jonas said grimly. Ryan was arrested 3 months ago for stalking an ex-girlfriend. Case was dropped when the sufferer refused to testify. She was scared, terrified. According to the responding officer, she packed up and moved to another state rather than face him in court. A doctor approached us, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes. Are you Mr. Foster? Yes, how is she? Concussion, bruised ribs, multiple contusions. She'll be fine physically, but I'd recommend counseling. This kind of trauma can have lasting effects. Can we see her? She's asking for you. Laura looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, connected to monitors and IV lines. The swelling around her eye had gotten worse, and the bruises on her neck stood out like purple fingerprints against her pale skin. How are you feeling? I asked, like I got hit by a truck. She tried to smile, but winced as it pulled at her split lip. Nick, about what I said earlier. Not now. You need to rest. No, listen to me. Ryan Cade is dangerous. More dangerous than Brian. I've heard stories. What kind of stories? Brian used to brag about him. Said Ryan never lost a fight, never backed down from anyone. He told me Ryan once put 3 men in the hospital because they looked at him wrong in a bar. Tough guy stories. Half of them are probably BS, maybe. But Brian was scared of him, really scared, and Brian isn't scared of much. Mia had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. Mom, why did you stay with Brian, even after he started hitting you? Laura's eyes filled with tears. I don't know, baby. I thought I deserved it. After what I did to your father, to our family, I thought maybe this was my punishment. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, Mia said bluntly. Nobody deserves to get hit. Not even people who make mistakes. Smart kid. Sometimes I wondered how she'd turned out so wise with parents like us. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Excuse me, Mr. Foster? There's a man downstairs asking about Laura Cade, says he's her brother-in-law. Ice formed in my stomach. What does he look like? Big guy, military bearing, very polite, but she hesitated. Something about him made me uncomfortable. I told him visiting hours were over, but he said he'd wait. I was already moving toward the door. Jonas, stay with them. Don't let anyone you don't recognize get near this room. Where are you going? To have a conversation. The hospital lobby was nearly empty at 2 a.m. I spotted Ryan Cade immediately. He was standing near the information desk, studying the directory board with the focused attention of a man planning an attack. Up close, he was even more intimidating than his photo suggested. Same height and build as Brian, but where his twin was soft around the edges, Ryan was all lean muscle and coiled violence. His hair was cut in a precise military fade, and his clothes were clean and pressed despite the late hour. He saw me coming and smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Nick Foster, I've heard a lot about you. Ryan Cade, I presume, here to check on your brother? Actually, I'm here to check on Laura. Make sure she's okay. His voice was calm, controlled, with just a hint of southern accent. Brian can be a little rough sometimes. A little rough. He put her in the hospital. Ryan shrugged. Laura's a grown woman. She makes her own choices. If she didn't like Brian's style, she could have left any time. She's leaving now, permanently. We'll see about that. The threat was delivered so casually, so matter-of-factly, that it took me a moment to process it. This wasn't the hot anger of a street thug or the chemical rage of a drunk. This was something colder, more calculating. Let me be clear, I said, stepping closer. Your brother is going to prison. Laura and my daughter are under police protection. If you go anywhere near them, I'll arrest you myself. On what charges? I'll think of something. Ryan's smile widened. You know, Brian told me you were some kind of tough guy, SWAT commander, war hero, all that. But standing here looking at you, I don't see much. Then you're not looking hard enough. Maybe we should find out. The lobby was empty except for a security guard who was pretending not to watch us. I could take Ryan here and now, but it would be messy in public. Better to wait for the right moment. This isn't over, Ryan said, as if reading my thoughts. Laura belongs to my family now. You had your chance with her and screwed it up. Time to step aside and let real men handle things. Real men don't beat women. Real men do whatever it takes to maintain order, something you obviously never learned. He turned and walked toward the exit, moving with the fluid grace of a hunter. At the door, he paused and looked back. Give Laura my regards. Tell her I'll be seeing her real soon. After he left, I stood in the empty lobby feeling like I'd just been challenged to a duel. Ryan Cade wasn't just another thug looking to cause trouble. He was something worse, a man with military training, a violent history, and a personal grudge against me. I called Jonas. How's everything upstairs? Quiet. Laura's sleeping. Mia's reading. Why? Ryan Cade was here. He's gone now, but I don't think he's done. Want me to call for backup? Not yet, but keep your eyes open. This guy's different from his brother. How so? I thought about Ryan's cold smile, his casual threats, the way he'd studied the hospital layout like he was planning an invasion. Brian's a bully. Ryan's a soldier. And I think we just declared war. As I headed back to Laura's room, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. Ryan Cade had come here for a reason, and it wasn't just to check on his brother's girlfriend. He was gathering intelligence, studying his target, preparing for whatever came next. In my experience, that was never a good sign. The next morning brought a parade of lawyers, social workers, and reporters. Word had gotten out about Brian's arrest, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about the SWAT commander who'd beaten up his ex-wife's boyfriend. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria with Mia, picking at a breakfast that tasted like cardboard, when Tanya Morrison slid into the seat across from us. Laura's best friend since high school, Tanya was a walking gossip mill who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. Nick, oh my God, I heard what happened. Is Laura okay? Tanya was one of those women who seemed to feed on drama. Bleached blonde hair, too much makeup, and a voice that carried across 3 counties. She'd never liked me during the marriage, always whispering in Laura's ear about how she could do better. She'll live, I said curtly. I can't believe Brian would do something like that. I mean, he was always a little rough around the edges, but I never thought... You knew he was violent? Tanya shifted uncomfortably and, well, not violent exactly, but Laura mentioned he had a temper. And there were a few times she came to work with bruises. And you didn't think to call someone? It wasn't my place. Laura's a grown woman. If she wanted help, she would have asked for it. Mia looked up from her orange juice. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. If your friend is being hurt and you don't help, you're just as bad as the person hurting them. Tanya flushed red. You don't understand, honey. Adult relationships are complicated. No, they're not, Mia shot back. You don't hit people you love. It's that simple. I was proud of my daughter in that moment. At 14, she had a clearer moral compass than most adults I knew. Tanya, I said, I need you to tell me everything you know about Brian and Laura's relationship, the truth, not the sanitized version. She glanced around nervously, and I don't know if I should. A man put my daughter in danger last night. His brother is making threats. If you know something that could help me protect my family, you need to speak up. Tanya sighed and leaned forward, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Okay, but you didn't hear this from me. Laura's been struggling since the divorce, drinking more, staying out all night, bringing home different men. Brian wasn't the first. How many others? I don't know exactly. 5, maybe 6. Laura called them her healing journey, but honestly, Nick, I think she was just trying to hurt herself. Or hurt you. The knife twisted a little deeper. What do you mean? She used to talk about how she wanted to find someone who was everything you weren't. Dangerous, unpredictable, exciting. She said living with you was like being married to a robot. A robot? Her words, not mine. She said you were too controlled, too predictable, that you never took risks or did anything spontaneous. I thought about 15 years of marriage, of working double shifts to pay for the house, of missing dinners and school plays because I was keeping the city safe. Apparently, being a responsible adult made me a robot. There's more, Tanya continued. Laura's been talking to a lawyer about getting full custody of Mia. She thinks if she can prove you're violent and unstable, she can cut you out of Mia's life completely. Based on what evidence? Last night. You attacked Brian, didn't you? In front of Mia. Laura's lawyer thinks that shows you have anger management issues. I stared at Tanya in disbelief. I stopped a man from beating my daughter. That's called being a father. I know that, and you know that, but lawyers can spin anything, especially if there are witnesses. What witnesses? Tanya looked even more uncomfortable. Brian's brother was there last night. Ryan, he saw the whole thing through the window. Laura's lawyer's going to call him as a witness. The pieces clicked into place. Ryan hadn't just been watching the hospital. He'd been watching the apartment during the arrest. He'd seen me break down the door, seen me and Rodriguez rough up his brother, and now he was going to use it against me in court. Mia, I said quietly, go check on your mom. I need to talk to Tanya alone. My daughter gave Tanya a withering look and left. Smart kid knew when adults were about to say things she shouldn't hear. Tell me about Ryan Cade, I said. I only met him once. He came to the bar where Laura and I were having drinks about a month ago. Brian introduced him as his twin brother, said he was visiting from out of state. What was your impression? Scary. Really scary. He didn't say much, just sat there watching everyone like he was planning something. Laura said he made her skin crawl, but Brian seemed afraid of him. Afraid how? Like a little kid trying to impress his big brother. Brian kept talking about all the tough things he'd done, all the fights he'd won, but Ryan just stared at him with this cold expression. Finally, Ryan said something like, "You talk too much, little brother," and Brian shut up immediately. Little brother? That's what I thought was weird. They're twins, but Ryan definitely acts like the older one. Brian defers to him on everything. I was starting to get a clearer picture of the Cade family dynamics. Brian was the muscle, the blunt instrument who solved problems with violence. But Ryan was the brains, the one who planned and calculated and waited for the right moment to strike. Tanya, I need you to do something for me. Stay away from Laura for a while. Don't visit her. Don't call her. Don't get involved in any of this legal BS. Why? Because I think you're being used. Laura's lawyer didn't just happen to know about last night's arrest. Someone told him exactly what to look for and who to call as a witness. Someone who knew the system well enough to turn my protecting my family into evidence against me. You think Ryan? I think Ryan Cade is a lot smarter than his brother and a lot more dangerous. And I think he's been planning this for longer than any of us realized. That afternoon, I drove to the county courthouse for Brian's arraignment. I wanted to look him in the eye when the judge read the charges, wanted to see his reaction when he realized how much trouble he was in. The courtroom was nearly empty except for a few lawyers and court officers. Brian sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his left arm in a sling from his dislocated shoulder. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the reality of his situation. But what caught my attention was the man sitting in the back row. Ryan Cade, dressed in a crisp, navy suit, taking notes on a legal pad. He looked up when I entered and nodded politely, like we were old friends. The arraignment was quick and brutal. The prosecutor read off a list of charges that would put Brian away for the next 5 to 10 years. Aggravated attack, domestic violence, child endangerment, resisting arrest, attack on a police officer. Brian's public defender looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. When it was over, Ryan approached me in the hallway. "Rough day for the family," he said conversationally. "Your brother brought it on himself." Maybe. But I can't help thinking this whole situation could have been avoided if you'd been a better husband. Excuse me? Laura wouldn't have needed to find comfort elsewhere if you'd taken better care of her. A woman like that needs attention, affection, excitement. From what I hear, you provided none of those things. You don't know anything about my marriage. I know Laura's been sharing some very interesting stories. about how cold you were, how controlling, how you used your job as an excuse to avoid closeness. Ryan's smile was sharp as a blade. She's quite talkative when she's had a few drinks. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You've been talking to Laura. We've become quite close. She needs someone who understands her, someone who can give her what she's been missing. Stay away from her. I don't think that's your decision to make anymore. You gave up that right when you signed the divorce papers. Ryan walked away, leaving me standing in the courthouse hallway with the sick realization that this wasn't just about Brian anymore. His brother had been playing a longer game, using Laura's loneliness and guilt to position himself as her protector and confidant. And I was just starting to understand how deep this rabbit hole went. 3 days later, my house looked like a war zone. I came home from work to find every window on the ground floor smashed, spray paint covering the front door, and my mailbox bent in half. The message was written in red paint across my garage door. You're next. Jonas was already there with a crime scene team, taking photos and collecting evidence. He looked grim as he approached me. Security cameras caught it, he said, handing me a tablet with video footage. 3 men, faces covered, but look at this. The video showed 3 figures moving quickly around my house, working with military precision. But as one of them raised his arm to throw a rock through my kitchen window, his sleeve pulled back to reveal a distinctive tattoo, an Army Ranger tab with crossed rifles. Ryan Cade, I said. That's what I'm thinking. But proving it is going to be another matter. I walked through my house, cataloging the damage. They'd been thorough, but not random. Family photos were smashed, but electronics were untouched. My bedroom had been trashed, but nothing was stolen. This wasn't a burglary. It was a message. Dad? Mia appeared in the doorway, her face pale. What happened? Just some vandalism, nothing we can't fix. This is about Brian, isn't it? About what you did to him? I wanted to lie, to protect her from the reality that we were now targets in someone else's war. But Mia was too smart for comforting fiction. Yeah, kiddo, it's about Brian. Are we safe here? I looked around my violated home at the broken glass and hateful words and made a decision. Pack a bag. We're staying somewhere else tonight. But as we were loading our suitcases into my truck, my phone rang. Laura's number. Nick? Oh God, Nick, they were here. They were in my apartment. Who was there? I don't know. I came home from the hospital and everything was destroyed. But there's a note. It says they know where Mia goes to school. The ice in my chest turned to fire. Threatening me was one thing. Threatening my daughter was something else entirely. Where are you now? At Tanya's. But Nick, I'm scared. What if they come back? They won't. I'm going to make sure of that. I hung up and called Jonas. I need a favor. Unofficial. What kind of favor? The kind that doesn't appear in any reports. That night, I set a trap. I let word slip through Tanya that Laura was staying at a safe house on the east side of town, a fictional address in an industrial area where I'd have plenty of room to maneuver. Then I waited. Ryan Cade was too smart to come himself, but I was counting on his arrogance to make him sloppy. He'd been escalating steadily, growing bolder with each move. Eventually, he'd make a mistake. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:30 p.m., a dark pickup truck cruised slowly past the address I'd given Tanya. It made 3 passes, then parked in the shadows between 2 warehouses. I watched through night vision binoculars as 2 men got out and began moving toward the building. One of them was definitely Ryan. Even in the darkness, I could recognize his military bearing. The other was smaller, probably one of Brian's criminal associates looking to earn some quick cash. I let them get halfway to the building before I made my move. The spike strip I'd stretched across the alley was nearly invisible in the darkness. I heard the sharp pop of punctured tires, then cursing as Ryan realized he'd been had. It's a trap! They ran for their truck, but 4 flat tires weren't going anywhere. I emerged from my hiding spot behind a dumpster, tactical flashlight in one hand, taser in the other. Ryan Cade, this is the police. Get on the ground. Instead of surrendering, Ryan's companion pulled a knife and charged me. I sidestepped his clumsy rush and hit him with the taser. 50,000 volts dropped him like a sack of cement. Ryan was smarter. He used his friend's distraction to circle around behind me, moving with the fluid grace of a trained soldier. I heard him coming at the last second and spun around, but he was already inside my guard. We went down hard, rolling across broken asphalt and scattered debris. Ryan was strong and fast, but I had 15 years of SWAT training and the fury of a father protecting his child. He tried to get me in a chokehold. I drove my elbow into his solar plexus and felt him grunt in pain. He rolled away and came up with a piece of rebar in his hand. You should have minded your own business, Foster. You made it my business when you threatened my daughter. He swung the rebar at my head. I ducked and tackled him around the waist, driving him backward into the side of a warehouse. The impact knocked the weapon from his hands, but he responded by kneeing me in the ribs. Pain exploded through my chest, but I held on, using my weight to pin him against the wall. Ryan tried to bite my ear, just like his brother had. Apparently, it was a family tradition. I headbutted him in the nose. Blood exploded across his face and he staggered backward, dazed. Had enough? I asked. His answer was to spit blood and charge me again. This time I was ready. I caught his wrist as he threw a punch, twisted his arm behind his back, and drove him face first into the gravel. Within seconds, I had him zip-tied and helpless. You're under arrest for stalking, making terroristic threats, and destruction of property. You can't prove anything. I don't have to. I've got you on video vandalizing my house, and your friend here will roll over on you the minute we offer him a deal. Ryan's companion was still twitching from the taser, but he was conscious enough to hear every word. I could see the calculation in his eyes. Loyalty to Ryan versus 5 to 10 years in prison. Wait, the man said weakly. I want to make a deal. Ryan's face went white with rage. You damn coward! Shut up, Ryan. You said this would be easy money. You didn't say anything about fighting cops. As we loaded them into the police van, Ryan looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Foster. You think you're tough because you got lucky tonight? I've got friends, resources, connections you can't imagine. When I get out, I'm going to destroy everything you care about. You're welcome to try. But as I watched the van drive away, I couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan was right about one thing. This was far from over. He'd escalated from vandalism to direct confrontation, and each time I stopped him, he came back harder and smarter. The question was, what would he try next? I got my answer 2 days later when Child Protective Services showed up at my door with a court order to remove Mia from my custody. Mr. Foster, I'm Janet Walsh from Child Protective Services. I have a court order here regarding your daughter's safety. The social worker was a thin, nervous woman in her 50s who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. She stood on my front porch with a police officer and a stack of legal documents, avoiding my eyes. What kind of court order? Emergency custody removal. We have credible reports that Mia is in danger due to her involvement in ongoing criminal activity. I scanned the papers, my blood pressure rising with each line. Someone had filed a complaint alleging that I was using my position as a police officer to engage in vigilante justice, that I'd threatened and attacked multiple individuals, and that my home was now a target for retaliation. Who filed this complaint? I'm not at liberty to say, but the allegations are quite serious. Multiple witnesses have come forward. Let me guess. Ryan Cade and his lawyer. Janet Walsh's uncomfortable silence was answer enough. This is BS, I said. I'm a sworn police officer. I've never been charged with any crime, never been disciplined by my department. Mr. Foster, I understand your frustration, but we have to take these allegations seriously. Until we can conduct a full investigation, Mia needs to be placed in protective custody. Protective custody from what? I'm her father. From the dangerous situation you've created by antagonizing violent criminals. Through the window, I could see Mia listening to every word. Her face was pale but determined, and I could see her calculating options just like I'd taught her. Can I at least talk to my daughter before you take her? Of course, but please make it brief. I pulled Mia into the kitchen, out of earshot from the social worker. Listen to me carefully, I said quietly. This is temporary. Ryan Cade is using the system against us, but we're going to beat him at his own game. Dad, I don't want to go with them. I know, kiddo. But if you fight this now, it'll just make things worse. Play along, be cooperative, and I'll have you back home within a week. Promise? Promise. But there's something I need you to do first. I handed her a small digital recorder, the kind I use for witness interviews. If anyone tries to coach you on what to say about me, if anyone tries to get you to lie or exaggerate, I want you to record it. Can you do that? What if they search me? Hide it in your bra. They can't search you there without a female officer present, and by then you'll be at the foster home. Mia hugged me fiercely. I love you, Dad. I love you too. And Mia, don't trust anyone who asks questions about our family. The only person you should talk to is your court-appointed advocate. Watching my daughter walk away with strangers was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But as the CPS van disappeared around the corner, I was already planning my counterattack. The first call I made was to my lawyer, a sharp-tongued woman named Patricia Vance, who specialized in family law and had a reputation for eating opposing counsel alive. Nick, I heard about the custody order. This is a hatchet job. Can you fight it? Already am. I've filed for an emergency hearing, and I'm requesting all documentation related to the complaint. Whoever did this was sloppy. There are procedural errors all over these filings. How long? 72 hours, maybe less. But Nick, you need to be squeaky clean until then. No contact with the Cade brothers, no vigilante justice, no cowboy crap, understood? Understood. But I had no intention of sitting quietly while Ryan Cade tried to destroy my family. The second call was to Jonas. I need everything you can find on Ryan Cade. Financial records, phone logs, travel history, known associates, everything. Nick, you're walking a thin line here. My daughter's in foster care because of this fool. The line doesn't exist anymore. Jonas was quiet for a moment. Give me 6 hours. The information he brought me was a goldmine. Ryan Cade wasn't just a violent ex-soldier. He was a career criminal who'd been flying under the radar for years. Bank records showed deposits from a dozen different sources, none of them legitimate employment. Phone records revealed regular contact with known pill dealers, weapons smugglers, and other criminal enterprises. But the most interesting discovery was a pattern of insurance claims. Over the past 5 years, Ryan had been involved in 7 different accidents, car crashes, workplace injuries, slip and fall incidents, each one resulting in a substantial settlement. Insurance fraud, Jonas said. This guy's been running scams for years. Can we prove it? With the right evidence, yeah, but it would take months to build a case. I don't have months. I need something now. That's when Jonas showed me the surveillance photos. Remember that warehouse where you took down Ryan? Well, it turns out he's been using it as a base of operations. Look at this. The photos showed Ryan meeting with various unsavory characters over the past several weeks. Pill deals, weapons transfers, planning sessions for what looked like burglaries or home invasions. How did you get these? Anonymous tip. Someone's been watching Ryan for a while, documenting his activities. Someone? Jonas shrugged. Could be a rival criminal, could be an undercover cop, could be someone with a personal grudge. Does it matter? It didn't. What mattered was that I now had evidence of Ryan's ongoing criminal activity, evidence that would destroy his credibility as a witness against me. But as I studied the photos, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the background of one image, partially obscured by shadows, was a familiar figure, Laura. She was standing next to Ryan's truck, talking animatedly with him about something. The timestamp showed the photo was taken 3 days ago, the same day she'd called me crying about her apartment being vandalized. Son of a witch. I whispered. What? Laura's been working with him. This whole thing, the custody complaint, the allegations against me, she's been feeding Ryan information. Jonas looked at the photo more closely. You sure that's her? Positive. Look at the way she's standing, the way she gestures with her hands. That's my ex-wife. The pieces were falling into place now. Laura's sudden concern about my violent behavior, her lawyer's detailed knowledge of my confrontations with the Cade brothers, the perfectly timed custody complaint, it was all part of a coordinated attack designed to isolate me from my daughter and destroy my reputation. But why? What did Laura have to gain from aligning herself with the man whose brother had beaten her? The answer came to me like a punch to the gut. Ryan hadn't just been manipulating Laura. He'd been seducing her, playing on her guilt and loneliness, convincing her that I was the real villain in this story, and she'd bought it completely. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Nick. Ryan's voice was calm, confident. How does it feel to lose everything that matters to you? Where are you calling from? That's not important. What's important is that you understand the new reality. Mia is gone, Laura hates you, and your precious reputation is about to be destroyed. You made one mistake, Ryan. You got greedy. What are you talking about? I know about the insurance fraud, the pill deals, the weapons trafficking. I've got photos Financial records, enough evidence to put you away for the next 20 years. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. You're bluffing. Try me. I can have federal agents at your door within an hour. Even if that's true, it doesn't change anything. Mia's still in foster care, and she's going to stay there until you learn to play by my rules. And what rules are those? Simple. You disappear. Quit your job. Leave town. Start over somewhere else. Do that, and I'll make sure the custody order gets dropped. And if I don't, then Mia grows up thinking her father's a violent psychopath who cared more about revenge than protecting his family. The line went dead. I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the wreckage of my life, and realized that Ryan Cade had been playing chess while I'd been playing checkers. Every move I'd made, he'd anticipated. Every strength I had, he'd turned into a weakness. But he'd made one crucial error. He'd assumed that losing everything would make me weak, desperate, willing to surrender. Instead, it made me dangerous. Because a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous man of all. The abandoned Riverside warehouse sat like a cancer on the east bank of the Mississippi, a relic from the city's industrial past that now served as a playground for criminals and hopheads. At 11 p.m. on a rainy Thursday night, it was the perfect place for a final confrontation. I'd been planning this moment for 3 days, ever since I'd received Ryan's ultimatum. Leave town or lose my daughter forever. Simple choice, except I'd never been good at simple. The warehouse was massive. 4 stories of rusted steel and broken windows with enough hiding places and escape routes to make it a tactical nightmare. But I knew the layout from a pill bust we'd conducted there 2 years ago, and I'd spent the afternoon rigging it with some creative modifications. Jonas was positioned on the roof of the adjacent building with a sniper rifle and night vision scope. Not to eliminate, we weren't homiciders, but to provide overwatch and make sure nobody left the party early. Overwatch in position, his voice crackled through my earpiece. I count 3 vehicles in the parking lot, Ryan's truck, Laura's sedan, and a black SUV I don't recognize. Copy that. How many people? Hard to tell. Windows are tinted, but I'm seeing movement on the 2nd floor. Looks like they're set up in the old office area. I checked my equipment one final time. Tactical vest, flashbang grenades, zip ties, pepper spray, and a taser. No lethal weapons. This wasn't about eliminating anyone. It was about justice. The kind of justice that courts couldn't deliver and lawyers couldn't negotiate. Remember, I said into my radio, we do this clean. No excessive force, no permanent damage, just enough to make a point. What point is that? That some people only understand one language. I entered the warehouse through a loading dock on the south side, moving carefully through the maze of abandoned machinery and debris. The air smelled like rust and decay, with an undertone of something chemical that made my nose burn. Voices echoed from the 2nd floor. Ryan's calm baritone, Laura's higher pitch, and at least 2 other men I didn't recognize. They were arguing about something, but I couldn't make out the words. The stairs to the 2nd floor were steel grating, designed to make silent movement impossible. But I'd come prepared for that, too. The small charges I'd planted earlier went off with muffled thumps, eliminating the lights throughout the building. What the hell? Stay calm. He's here. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Perfect. I'd trained for low-light operations my entire career, while Ryan's criminal friends were probably night-blind without their normal illumination. I moved up the stairs like smoke, using the chaos to close distance. Through the office windows, I could see 4 figures. Ryan, Laura, and 2 men I didn't recognize. One of them was holding what looked like a pistol. Time to even the odds. The flashbang went off like a miniature sun, filling the office with blinding light and deafening noise. I was through the door before the echoes faded, taser in hand. The gunman went down first, 50,000 volts turning his muscles to jelly. His weapon clattered across the floor, well out of reach. Ryan's friend, a thin man with prison tattoos and yellow teeth, tried to rush me with a knife. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and introduced him to my friend Mr. Pepper Spray. He went down screaming, clawing at his burning eyes. That left Ryan and Laura. My ex-wife was pressed against the far wall, her face a mask of terror and guilt. She looked older than her 38 years, worn down by months of bad choices and worse company. Ryan stood in the center of the room like a hunter, calm, despite the chaos around him. He was wearing a tactical vest similar to mine, and his hands were empty but ready. "Hello, Nick. Right on time. Where's my daughter?" "Safe, for now." That wasn't the deal. "You said if I came here alone." "I said a lot of things. Most of them were lies." Ryan's smile was cold as winter. "Did you really think I'd just let you walk away? After everything you've done to my family?" "Your family? Your brother's a woman-beating piece of crap and you're not much better." Brian made mistakes. He let his emotions control him, got sloppy, got caught. But he's still my brother, and nobody hurts my family without consequences. Funny, I feel the same way about my daughter. We circled each other like wolves looking for an opening. Ryan moved with the fluid grace of a trained butcher, but I could see the tells. The slight favoring of his left side, where I damaged his ribs, the way he kept his right hand positioned to draw a concealed weapon. "You know what your problem is, Foster. You think being a cop makes you special. You think that badge gives you the right to play judge and jury. I think it gives me the responsibility to protect innocent people from hunters like you." "Innocent?" Ryan laughed. "Look around you. Your ex-wife has been feeding me information about you for weeks. She told me your schedule, your habits, where you like to eat lunch. She even gave me the security codes to your house." I glanced at Laura, seeing the truth in her guilty expression. "Why?" "Because she hates you," Ryan said. "Because you made her feel small and worthless for 16 years. Because you cared more about your job than your family." "That's not true, isn't it? How many dinners did you miss? How many school plays, birthday parties, anniversaries? You were so busy playing hero for strangers that you forgot to be a husband and father." The words hit like physical blows, because they contained just enough truth to hurt. I had missed things, had put work before family more often than I should have. But that didn't justify what Laura had done. "So you decided to destroy me." "I decided to give Laura what she needed, someone who would put her first, someone who understood her worth." "By having your brother beat her?" Ryan's expression darkened. "That wasn't the plan. Brian was supposed to scare her, make her dependent on us for protection. But he got carried away, let his temper get the better of him. And when that didn't work, you decided to take my daughter. Mia's better off without you. Laura and I can give her a stable home, a real family." That's when I understood the full scope of his plan. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about replacement. Ryan intended to step into my life, take my ex-wife and daughter, and erase me completely, over my dead body. That can be arranged. Ryan moved like lightning, pulling a knife from his boot and lunging at my throat. I barely got my arm up in time to block the strike, feeling the blade slice through my jacket. We crashed into a desk, scattering papers and debris. Ryan was strong and fast, but I had 15 years of hand-to-hand combat training and the fury of a father protecting his child. He tried to knee me in the groin. I shifted and took the impact on my thigh, then drove my elbow into his solar plexus. He grunted and staggered backward, but kept hold of the knife. "You should have taken my deal," he gasped. "Should have just walked away." "I don't walk away from bullies." He came at me again, the knife weaving through the air in precise patterns. Military training. He knew how to use that blade. I grabbed a chair and used it to keep distance between us, looking for an opening. "Laura!" Ryan shouted. "Get the tool!" My ex-wife was frozen against the wall, staring at us with wide eyes. "Ryan, stop this. You said nobody would get hurt. Plans change. Get the damn tool." Instead, Laura ran for the stairs. Smart woman. She'd finally figured out what kind of man she'd allied herself with. Ryan's distraction gave me the opening I needed. I threw the chair at his legs, tangling him up, then tackled him around the waist. We went down hard, rolling across broken glass and scattered debris. The knife went flying, clattering across the floor. I tried to pin Ryan's arms, but he was stronger than I'd expected. He bucked and twisted, trying to throw me off. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "Even if you eliminate me, you'll never get Mia back. I've got friends, connections. They'll make sure you're branded as a violent psychopath who homicided an unarmed man." "Who said anything about homicide?" I pulled out the zip ties and secured his hands behind his back, then dragged him to his feet. Ryan's 2 associates were still incapacitated, one unconscious from the taser, the other blind and helpless from pepper spray. "Jonas, this is Nick. Building secure. Send in the cavalry." "Copy that. ETA 2 minutes." But Ryan wasn't finished. Even zip-tied and helpless, he kept talking, trying to get under my skin. You know what Laura told me about you? She said you were boring in bed. Said making love to you was like screwing a machine. All technique, no passion. I ignored him, focusing on securing the scene for the arriving officers. She used to fake her peaks, Nick, every single time. Said it was easier than trying to teach you how to please a woman. Keep talking. It's just giving me more evidence of your psychological manipulation tactics. Is that what you think this is? Manipulation? Ryan laughed. Laura came to me, Nick. She sought me out because she was desperate for a real man. That's when Laura reappeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 SWAT officers. Her face was streaked with tears, and she looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Nick, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. Save it for your lawyer. No, you need to hear this. She took a shaky breath. Ryan's been blackmailing me. He said if I didn't help him, he'd hurt Mia. I studied my ex-wife's face, looking for signs of deception. After 16 years of marriage, I knew all her tells, the way she bit her lower lip when she was nervous, the way she couldn't meet my eyes when she was lying. She was telling the truth. What kind of blackmail? Pictures, video, things from when I was drinking heavily, when I wasn't thinking clearly. Ryan said he'd put them online, send them to my work, show them to Mia. What kind of pictures? Laura's face flushed red with shame. Compromising ones, with Brian, with other men. I was drunk, I was hurting, I made stupid choices. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Ryan hadn't just been manipulating Laura. He'd been documenting her self-destruction, collecting ammunition to use against her when the time was right. You could have come to me, I said. How? You hated me. After what I did to our marriage, why would you help me? Because you're Mia's mother. Because despite everything, I don't want to see you destroyed. Ryan was listening to this exchange with growing fury. You're both pathetic. Laura, you spineless witch. I hit him. Not with a weapon, not with tactical precision, just a straight right cross that snapped his head back and split his lip. That's for calling my daughter's mother a witch. Blood trickled down Ryan's chin, but he was still smiling. Feel better? Think that solved anything? Actually, yeah, I do feel better. More SWAT officers were pouring into the building now, securing the scene and taking the criminals into custody. But I wasn't finished with Ryan Cade yet. Where's my daughter? Go screw yourself. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. See this? It's a text message I sent before I came here tonight. One word, go. My lawyer is standing by with federal agents who have warrants for your arrest on charges of insurance fraud, weapons trafficking, and interstate transportation of stolen goods. Ryan's confident expression wavered for the first time. That's right, I continued. While you were busy playing games with my family, I was building a real case against you. Bank records, surveillance footage, witness testimony from your criminal associates who were surprisingly eager to cooperate once they realized how much trouble they were in. You're bluffing. Am I? Because in about 30 seconds, those federal agents are going to start executing search warrants on every property you own or have access to, including the storage unit where you've been keeping stolen merchandise and the apartment where you've been holding my daughter. Ryan's face went white. You can't prove it. I can prove everything. Your insurance scams, your pill deals, your weapons trafficking, your abducting of a minor child. You're looking at 25 to life, Ryan. The only question is whether you want to make this easy or hard. The sound of sirens was getting closer now. Not just local police, but federal agents with warrants and the authority to tear Ryan's life apart piece by piece. Last chance, I said. Where is Mia? Ryan stared at me for a long moment, calculation flickering behind his eyes. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. She's at my apartment. 1247 University Avenue, Unit 3B. She's not hurt. I'm not a monster. No, you're just a criminal who threatens children to get what he wants. Federal agents were storming into the building now, led by a stern-faced woman who looked like she'd rather be home with her family than chasing down dirtbags in abandoned warehouses. Agent Sarah Chen, FBI, she announced. Which one of you is Ryan Cade? I pointed to the zip-tied man bleeding from his split lip. That would be him, and he just confessed to abducting my daughter. What followed was a carefully orchestrated ballet of justice. Ryan and his associates were read their rights and hauled away in federal custody. Laura was taken into protective custody as a witness, finally free from the blackmail and manipulation that had controlled her life for months, and I got my daughter back. Mia was exactly where Ryan said she'd be, unharmed, but scared. locked in a bedroom of his apartment with nothing but a bucket for a toilet and a bag of fast food for sustenance. When I kicked down the door and saw her sitting on that mattress, my heart broke and soared at the same time. Dad. She threw herself into my arms, and I held her like I'd never let go. It's over, kiddo. It's all over. Are you sure? I looked around Ryan's apartment, seeing the evidence of his crime scattered everywhere. Stolen goods, weapons, pills, and, most damning of all, a computer full of blackmail material he'd been using to control his sufferers. Yeah, I'm sure. Ryan Cade is going to prison for a very long time. As we walked out of that apartment together, Mia asked the question I'd been dreading. Dad, what's going to happen to Mom? I thought about Laura, about the woman I'd once loved and the broken person she'd become, about the choices she'd made and the price she'd paid for them. I don't know, sweetheart, but whatever happens, she's going to have to face it without us. Good, Mia said firmly. I love Mom, but I'm tired of her drama. I just want things to be normal again. Normal? After everything we'd been through, normal sounded like paradise. 6 months later, Ryan Cade was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison on charges ranging from insurance fraud to abducting. Brian got 10 years for attack and domestic violence. Laura entered rehab and eventually moved to another state, sending occasional letters that Mia usually threw away without reading. And me? I went back to being a SWAT commander, a father, and a man who'd learned that sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to be willing to lose everything in the process. But I didn't lose everything. I kept what mattered most, my daughter's respect, my own integrity, and the knowledge that when evil men threaten innocent people, there are still those willing to stand up and fight back, even if it means kicking down a few doors along the way.